endeavor here. Same cult, gods and goddesses. It's all about, well, space sex. It's a fertility cult, and SpaceX is named that because it is, in fact, phonetically proximal to space sex. It's a joke and not a joke. It's just in your face. And I was watching the last launch that Virgin Galactic did are comical. Not just the overjaw, not just them floating around with their mouths wide open, acting like they're impressed, pretending like they're not dangling from cords, but there's also bubbles. If you look at these various launches, I think these civilian ones are worse than NASA's in some ways. They don't know how to hide their bubbles. But yeah, every aspect of Virgin Galactic is about goddess worship. It corresponds, of course, to the goddess Isis, as the ISS too is a reference to the goddess Isis. Everything here with the space program is about the mystery religion, or mystery Babylon they call it. It's about this astrotheological cult, but it's been dressed up like science fiction. The idea that anybody goes to space is a farce. Nobody goes to space. Unless, I mean, and if you know somebody who knows somebody who says they've gone, I'm like, well, somebody along the line there is not telling the entire truth. It could be an NDA, somebody's acting. Going through some comments, Lean Dion says Shatner and company were literally making, yeah, they were making some pretty bad noises. Again, not unintentional. There's a meaning to this stuff. But the idea that they're going to space at 50 miles is pretty pathetic. It used to be 62. They've changed it. He launched into space to win the billionaire space race. He was racing between Bezos and Musk, didn't have a chance of going. But he launched on 7/11/2021, which is the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling. Not insignificant. 9 days later is when Jeff Bezos launched, and he took off at 9:11 a.m. on the anniversary of Apollo 11. Double shout out to Stanley Kubrick, who directed both of those movies. All right, I'm looking forward to the Ultra Mega Moon. Tomorrow, Guy Fawkes Day, could be interesting. Kyrie Irving has taken the world's mind off of nuclear Armageddon. It's like, look, Putin could nuke us now and nobody's going to care because so-and-so said the J word. So-and-so said the N word. Look how fickle the mass mind is. Look how easy it is to distract people. Like, do you remember when social distancing and masks was a thing? And the people who were really believers in it would pretty much have you tossed into a gulag or a Guantanamo if they could for non-compliance. And yet now you can find them out spitting on their political enemies. Like, I might not agree with anything someone has to say, but getting physical and spitting on people, yeah, that's taking it too far. But yeah, you can find libs who used to believe in pandemics and stuff spitting on their political opponents. It's like, did you forget? Did you forget the new normal already? Yes, they did. They forgot about Putin. And that's probably the whole point of it. This is how they operate. Now, what's going to take our minds off of Kanye? What's bigger than Kanye? Any guesses? By the way, if you have not been receiving the text alerts, go to infiniteplane.media. I'll put the link in the chat below, and I'll be sending out texts. Tomorrow is Infinite Plane Saturn Day. We're not going to miss it. Infinite Plane Saturn Day. We kind of do a recap on the previous week, and I do have a number of guests who have been trying to get in. I'm trying to get a more regular schedule, but things are leveling out despite the fact that we had a number of cancellations. I mean, we've been canceled quite a lot. Not officially canceled, not in the way that actually blows you up. It's the Barbra Streisand effect that they aim for. If you try to make it look like you're canceled, it makes it appear like you're scarce. Sleepy Random, yes, Kanye cured Putin. Well, Putin cured COVID. COVID cured radical Islam. Kanye cured Putin. What's going to cure Kanye? It's probably going to be the red wave. Or, yeah, Lean Dion says Poseidon. Poseidon, the Kraken, the red wave, nuclear winter. This red wave thing, though, I think holds the most weight simply because of the name of the Patriot Front's leader, Rousseau. That is 100% code. That's a reference to what's to come. Just as Derek Chauvin, the name is very much tied to the story. The Patriot Front thing is too perfect. In fact, the Patriot Front made their appearance on 6/11 when 33 of them came out of the back of that U-Haul. And the police were like, how did you know they were coming? Oh, we had some of our own mixed in with them. It's like, oh, really, some? Out of 33 Patriot Front members in masks in the back of a U-Haul, how many of them were cops? How many were feds? How many were real patriots? Uh, I'm guessing all 33 of them were feds. I wouldn't even give them the benefit of the doubt for one dupe. They wouldn't have a sting of 30 people to get three. You know, it was whole thing's obviously a scam. Diana South says swatting yourself to play victim. Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene has swatted herself 3 times, I believe. I believe Tim Pool's been swatted 13 times. Gavin McInnes, he's done a few bad, questionable things to himself on camera, but he swatted himself. Unbelievable that he has any credibility. Again, founder of the Proud Boys, pulled a Jussie Smollett. Like, you cannot criticize Jussie Smollett if you have swatted yourself. But yeah, swatting, canceling, death faking, these are 3 marketing tactics that have been tested time and again, and they seem to work. All right, thanks for joining. If you want to get the archives, you do need to subscribe to the newsletter. Go to infiniteplane.media, and of course the reason why is that we don't know necessarily where we're going to be as far as platforms go. I've centered everything at ips.monster. I no longer bother telling people to go to this platform or that. Why even name them? YouTube may not exist in a few years. Why give their memes any kind of mention at all? ips.monster takes you right to the archives, the think tank, and the sign up, everything that has to do with the site. Of course, a lot of our content is now on Rofkin. We have like 1,400 subs there. Look, we can't build 100 on YouTube without getting censored, without getting strikes. And we're up to like 1,400 on Rofkin, which is much smaller than YouTube. If you think about that, how is it that on some little known site in the corner of the interwebs, without even promoting it, we get 1,500 subs in a couple of months? We've been on YouTube off and on for 5 years. And look, there was one period in 2018 when YouTube wasn't paying attention, and for about 6 weeks, we went from a few hundred subs to 11,000. They didn't let that happen again. But yes, Rofkin has our archives. I mark everything there free. You don't have to be a paid member. There's your link. We're also on Odyssey. And if you search Infinite Plane Radio, you can find us on your favorite podcast provider, whichever one you listen to. Even if they pull us, it doesn't take me long to, again, we're a Hydra with like 15 heads and 80 neck stumps. But just search Infinite Plane Radio. Lickety Split 333 says, just getting here, what's the topic? Well, the topic is, what's going to cure Kanye? Kanye cured Putin and the nukes in Armageddon and Judgment Day. Putin cured COVID. COVID cured radical Islam. Just trying to figure out what's coming along next. I'm kind of waiting for Kanye to go OJ. I thought they were going to make that happen, but it seems like it's more like Helter Skelter. It's going to go more Charles Manson than OJ. The predictions based on, again, predictive programming, these aren't premonitions, these are not guesses. Everything indicates that the mass media is bracing to report on some kind of right-wing event, I'm expecting some kind of Timothy McVeigh type of situation. And why would we even call this out? What's the point? This is not doom and gloom. I'm not making predictions with that in mind. Like, oh, buy my discounted food storage or storable food items. Get your, waterproof Bible and your ammunition because, it's like, no, this isn't about grab your Bible and your guns and run for the hills. I'm saying we're looking at patterns so we can pre auto hoax it. Like we know how they can fake things. We know they can fake nukes. I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we're just looking at the hypotheticals, what's around the corner, so we kind of have an edge. Like, for example, there was that trampling death in South Korea where 150 people were trampled to death. Yeah, no, it wasn't the shot. The 150 people went into cardiac arrest because they were trampled, according to the news. But having studied the trampling at the Indonesian soccer game, I was already wary of the fact that, yeah, they can fake mass tramplings quite easily. And why would they do it? Well, it depends on the event. And this one came on the heels of lockdowns. And you'll notice after lockdowns, I think they want to reinstill the fear of crowds, agoraphobia. And that's kind of what happened with the Astro World event, a mass trampling. My point is, people look at these things and they react. Oh, this is terrible. How dare you say that this wasn't real? And I'm like, wait, we already have a past precedent here. We know they use dummies. In fact, we can point you to a company where you can buy your own George Floyd doll. You can intubate it. You can practice giving it CPR. Anyway, we looked very closely at that Halloween party in Seoul, and there were people giving CPR to rubber dummies everywhere. And one of the rubber dummies was given CPR on its thigh. Like the guy was trying to revive its thigh. Just very bad acting. One observer had actually reported to the news. She said, I looked down my window and it looked like it was staged. She said it looked like a bunch of actors. Lean Dion says, go into the metaverse, it's safer. Exactly. Exactly. And what did they say at Astro World as they were being crushed? The people at the front were getting crushed. They said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And guess who their attorney is? Guess who's representing the people who were crushed over there at Astro World? Benjamin Crump, aka Forrest Crump. High-profile civil rights lawyer Benjamin Crump said Monday that he's been retained by Urza's parents, the 9-year-old Astroworld crush survivor. Anytime I ask you how many bullets were fired, how many people died, how old was so-and-so, like how old is Candace Owens, how many bullets did Frank James fire into the subway, how old was Timothy McVeigh when he was executed, the answer is 33. Anytime I give you a pop quiz and it's a number, just a hint, it's going to be 43. Anytime I say, at this event, the people said they couldn't breathe, and Benjamin Crump represented, or a lawyer represented him. Who is it? Pop quiz. Who was the attorney that came to represent these people who couldn't breathe? The answer is going to be Benjamin Crump. I talked about the Bronx fire. 19 floors. Guess who's representing them? And one of the victims of this event even said, I can't breathe. Attorney Ben Crump speaks to residents of a building that had a fatal fire last month in the Bronx borough of New York on Tuesday. Again, there's a pattern here. Forrest Crump. There's also Dr. Michael Bader. He's the medical examiner who dealt with what? JFK, Elvis, Epstein, Adam Lanza, Gabby Petito. I mean, a who's who of dead celebrities. They all go through the same examiner. Diana South says they did CPR to the lifelike dummies to blaring music of the Bee Gees classic Staying Alive. Okay, I was watching one of the clips and I was like, what music is that? Like they're doing CPR to the beat. And for a moment I thought, this is a Halloween party. Maybe this is like their intro to the Thriller or the Michael Jackson song that they like to do on Halloween when the people come out and do the zombie dance, the thriller dance. I thought, well, maybe these people are playing dead, and then they all get CPR'd back to life, and they all. But no, no. Sadly, they were all literally dead dolls, dead dummies. No dummies were actually harmed in the making of the Soul Crush psyop in South Korea. Let me bring up 7 Sigma. In case anybody here needs to obtain a realistic, modular, high fidelity airway training doll that looks just like George Floyd, yep, go to 7s3.com. And what's more, not only can they customize them, but they can make them look like anybody. They're realistic inside and out. But what's really interesting about this thing, and look, Society for Simulation in Healthcare, Sim Ghosts USA, Sim Ops Expo, Child Trainer Replacement Airway, Child Trainer Replacement Teeth, Swollen Victim Complete Airway Assembly, Caucasian, African American, fully customizable, hyper realistic, head to toe. This company was situated in the Twin Cities from 1987 to 2020. For 33 years, they were the leading manufacturer of these realistic intubation simulation dolls. If they could speak, they would say, "I can't breathe." If you look here, it looks exactly like the dummy that was used interchangeably with the actor during the production on 5/25/2020. Again, there's your George Floyd doll. The thing is, this company was there for 33 years. And anybody here care to guess what the first building burned by the rioters of the George Floyd riots happened to be? Yep. Before they burned down the police precinct, and they didn't even go after the convenience store that called the cops on them. No, the first place they burned was 7 Sigma. Yep, the rioters torched 7 Sigma there in the Twin Cities. Diana South says, the same dummies that jumped out of the Twin Towers. Oh, yeah. And how many times did we see dummies? Like, not true believers in the MSM, not the people that worshiped Fauci. I mean, how many times did we see actual dummies in the emergency rooms on the news getting intubated? It's like those are all rubber dummies on the news when they weren't showing you recycled stock footage. Oh, this is an ER in Italy. This is an ER in downtown New York. This is an ER in San Diego. It's like, it's the same footage. I'm pretty sure that the dummies that were shot out of pneumatic cannons from the World Trade Tower on 9/11/2001 were probably made out of fire hose. I've seen these training dummies that firemen were using at the time that were made of fire hose, wired up together into the shape of a person, very heavy. Yeah, 9/11 jumpers, easy to fake. Some people have problems with that. The 9/11 jumper truthers. They're like, oh, there's no way you could fake that. It's like, really? You can fake planes. If you can fake planes, you can fake bodies. What's the difference? Well, it's been an interesting week. We had the hammer attack on free speech, talked about Godzilla's birthday, Antichrist Musk. Blood clots are the current thing. You'll hear more about that between now and Stu Peters' documentary comes out in a few weeks. Blood clots are so hot right now. In fact, I'm reaching out to a number of embalmers who have reported this. I'm doing my own research. I am calling around and making some calls here just to find out who is actually making this claim. It's something I'm going to be confronting here in the coming days. Diana South says the Dummies Actor Guild. Yeah, you have the Screen Actors Guild. Those are the mainstream crisis actors who also play roles in movies. Then you have the Government Actors Guild. They can't make it into the SAG, the gags. These are the crisis actors. The Dummy Actor Guild, I don't know where you would include, like, how would you include the actual dead people that they use? Whenever they use real deaths to advance their stories, you have dead crisis actors. Whenever they put bodies in these external trailers outside of hospitals, these external refrigeration units, these trailers that were set up for it, they were using real bodies to fill those up. Now, you can't prove those were killed from this or that, but they were being appropriated for the optics of it. Case in point here, the morgue beneath the hospital was closed so that they had to use the bodies outside, in the outside freezers. They had to move the bodies to the outside freezers. It's like, why would you do that? You have a perfectly good refrigeration unit here in the basement, but you're going to roll them out in front of the public and then put them in these trailers in the back parking lot. And of course, these trailers are noisy. You can hear them from down the street. So if you're in the college area, you're in the dorms, you can always hear these refrigerator units out there, keeping the excess deaths, the apparently excess deaths, cool. Now, they're not excess deaths. They look excess. It looks like the hospital's full because they're using these auxiliary units. But my point is, no, they used the auxiliary units because they needed these bodies to perform as crisis actors. A couple of other things we've been talking about. We have, all right, here we go, disaster trolls. Again, disaster troll is from the BBC. If you're questioning these stories, you're obviously a troll. You can't be a serious critical thinker, but you're a quote disaster troll. It's a smear against auto hoaxers. And there's an individual out, Richard D. Hall, I believe is his name, and he's fact-checking the claims of all these actors, or rather these supposed victims from this bombing at the concert in Manchester. And some of these people are claiming that they're being stalked because he's actually going to their doors and he's just fact-checking them. And he's being called a disaster troll. No, he's a reporter. The reporters don't know what a reporter looks like because they just read teleprompters. They don't do investigative journalism and they don't fact-check their masters. A real reporter, to them, they don't understand it. It's a disaster troll. So much projection when it comes down to it. Who are the disaster trolls here? They call you a hoaxer. Like, I'm not a hoaxer if I'm calling out a hoax. You're the perp. I'm calling you out. And you're calling me the perp? It's like I go to a magic show and I'm like, hey, that's fake. And he's going to call me the magician? No, no, no. Like, you see what they do. They totally project and people go with it. Halloween stampede, hammered Pelosi's, the trifecta of hate speech rises. Again, Parler, Kanye, Musk, Twitter, Trump, Truth Social, the trifecta of hate speech. Is Elon Musk the Antichrist Jack Parsons summoned? It's a newsletter I put out last week. If you don't follow my newsletter, go to timosman.blog. And I put out a newsletter whenever I have a lot of Metascript heavy content. I just want to put out like a bullet pointed list. Here are the different things that create this picture. I publish it here on this blog. Like, for example, this costume that Musk was wearing with the red armor and the ram's head. All of this, as I outlined here, correlates perfectly to the composite character that he is. Of course, Werner von Braun, Tony Stark, Willy Wonka, and of course, it ties in to the symbolism of Mars and the New Age body of symbols that are all correlated with this. Specifically, Aries, red, and the number 4. And of course, Aries is represented by the ram's head on his chest. It does have upside down crosses on it, and it's called the Devil's Champion. Again, just because he wears it on Halloween, you might be inclined to give it a pass. But, given his history of blatant, what do you want to call it? Satanism is just not the right term. But when you do flash the colors, the symbols, the numbers, the code of the occult societies that run the world, what else can you say? He may be playful about it. Yeah, it's a costume, it's cosplay. The number 42, it's from science fiction. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, he puts 42 on everything. But no, the 42, that number, which Musk puts on everything, 42,000 CubeSats. He's constantly throwing it out there. Well, uh, that number has a meaning outside of Musk's use of it. Jeff Bezos bought a $42 million clock. Yeah, 42 is a coded reference to the god of time, to Kronos, to Saturn, the god of life and death, or the cycles of life and death, the god of recycling, you could say. Diana South says Elon's mom is a Satan worshiper. Something interesting about Elon Musk's mom, May Musk, and this actually is extremely interesting. I found a picture of her that someone posted in our server, and she had like a red background. And I did a right click and a Google Lens search. And what happened was very startling. And you could probably find this for yourself. I'm not exactly sure what image I chose. It was like at random. So I'm going at random, and I right click May Musk and I put search image with Google Lens. And what it brought up, and again, it was just a simple right click, no other search criteria, just right click, search, and it brought up images of David Bowie, the man who fell to earth, specifically from the man who fell to earth era. And I thought that's interesting, given that, of course, the man who fell to earth is another one of these space savior stories, and it pertains to David Bowie, who relates to David Bowman from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And when Elon Musk sent his Tesla Roadster into space, it was playing a David Bowie song, and it had an effigy of David Bowie as or as Starman in the driver's seat. Well, Starman, anagram for Mr. Satan, a reference to the man who fell to earth, really does tie all this together. Again, Antichrist Trump, savior from space, some kind of space hero narrative going on here. Again, May Musk just happens to show up as David Bowie. And this may also tie into something else. David Bowie, also very much steeped in Crowleyism, represents this New Age ideal, or New Age, like the model for the New Age is the androgen, which is what Horus actually represents. We're talking about the age of Horus, this new deity. Yeah, they worship an androgen, and Bowie always represented that. Another interesting aspect to all of the story, this big story as it unfolds, this New Age savior and his mom, weirdly enough, it's not me doing it. It's actually Google doing it. In fact, it's on my TikTok. It's probably one of the few videos of mine they haven't deleted. I'm not going to promote my TikTok if you want to find it. I'm kind of done with TikTok. My last video says community guidelines violation. I have 100 followers. There's a billion videos on TikTok. How did they find my video that quick? And the video I'm speaking of is the South Pole parody we did of this Kanye West thing. I mean, we're either being followed, and every video that we post is like somehow being reported, or I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be paranoid. Okay, here it is. David Bowie appears as Elon Musk's mother in Google Lens search. This is a Google Lens search, and I'm going to search on her face. So I drag the square up. You can do this yourself. I have this image linked on my Minds account below. And look who it brings up. On the bottom here, that it would be Starman, David Bowie, along with May Musk. Yep, nothing to see here. Found that by accident, by coincidence. The reason I found it was this. Somebody posted it and they said, this is Musk's mom. And I said, Okay, you guys are just joking. This is some kind of other actor. I right-clicked it, it brought up Bowie. Yes, I am Infinite Plane Media on TikTok if anybody cares. I don't know if I really want to put too much into TikTok. I had this idea that I would put all the clips that we use on TikTok to make it convenient and easy, and then we can organically build up. But if they're already censoring me at this point, that's just not going to happen. Same with YouTube. It'd be nice to play it safe and build up 1,000 followers and get some larger crowds in, especially for callers. Um, but it's, can I toe that line? I don't know. It seems like everything I do is extra offensive these days to the algorithms. All right, this has been great. We'll continue tomorrow. Infinite Plane Saturn Day. Again, we're looking forward to the red wave and whatever takes Kanye off of the top story. I don't know what can do it. What can top a nuke? What can top Kanye being politically incorrect? Who knows? This is One-Eyed Jack in the Shells, Pope Elon. Have a great night.
We're all going to die someday. And if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? Okay. If we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars.
You see the gas. Away from the sun is the darkest black you can imagine. Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars?
All right, sorry to disappoint those of you who aren't in the know, but space is fake. That's Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. You can find Chief Crow on Spotify. I'll put a link below to this track. We're starting a little bit early. I sent out text notifications. I sent out email notifications. And, I probably should have put something in the title about Elon Musk and his Antichrist outfit, but we'll get into that right away. I talked about it on the day that he showed up in that costume. And it's one of those things where, is it just a costume? Sometimes it's only a costume. Sometimes it's only a hand sign. And people do read into things. However, I think there's sufficient case here to be made for maybe Musk's costume has a double meaning. One, it's a harmless joke, a little bit of billionaire cosplay. But on the other hand, it does tie in to the bigger composite, which we know of as Elon Musk. And we will talk about that. Let me go ahead and see who's here already in the chat. Like I said, I sent out notifications. I know it's early. It's prior to 8 o'clock a.m. Here in New Mexico. We're going to talk about disaster trolling. I guess we're all disaster trolls. Shout out to the BBC. Conspire racist disaster trolls. when we're really just fact checkers and media critics. Pope Elon's going to sell blue checks on Twitter for $8 a month. $8 a month, you can be a fully fledged, verified misinformationist. They started off $20. He said 20, and David Hogg threatened to leave. A few others did too. Even Stephen King said they should be paying me to tweet. But he lowered it down to $8 for a check. But I did read some alarming things about it. For example, ban evaders. A ban evader is someone who opens up a new account when they've been kicked off. And I didn't realize that I'm a ban evader because this is my 151st YouTube channel. I've been banned on every platform multiple times. And if I followed those rules precisely, if they held me to it, I would have been silenced years ago. But I am a ban evader, and they say that on Twitter, ban evaders will be removed. But I'm thinking if you pay them $8 a month, they're going to be less likely to ban you because then you'll get a refund. And I think maybe that's what they're doing here. You're paying, it's nice, nice kiosk here, nice business you got there. It'd be terrible if something would happen to it. Trump's not dead despite the trending hashtag. Now, the Kanye West thing got rid of nukes. Everyone was afraid of nukes, Armageddon, Judgment Day, and then that's what was going to clear the decks. I was wondering. It's like we had 18, 19 years of Islamic terrorism. That was cured by COVID. COVID was cured by Putin. Nukes come along, and I thought something's got to replace nukes, something huge, because you can't top that. And yes, it's Kanye West dropping his own, what are you going to call these? These conspiracy theories, but mostly his claims in general about the so-called Jewish-controlled media, which is something of a trope. And he's been catching flack ever since. And we'll talk about that as well because I do believe it's scripted. It's as fake as what happens with any of these celebrities. They're all connected to the same psyop entertainment complex. I mean, look, Kardashians are inseparable from the OJ drama. And I think that Kanye is the OJ of this generation. Now, I don't think that means he's going to go stabby on Pete Davidson. But if you think about it, he already has. He did decapitate Pete Davidson in a music video. He did send ominous messages. For example, after the video in which Pete Davidson was buried in a grave covered in roses, Kanye actually sent a truck full of roses to the Kardashian and Davidson's residence. But we'll see. There's still time. I still expect to see Kanye West riding off into the sunset on a white horse, likely covered in stage blood. A. Garcia says racism seems to qualify as free speech unless it's about the Jews. I think there's a fake double standard there. I mean, it's very subjective anyway when you get into this talk. More than 66% of hate crimes are hoaxed, and you have this perceptual bias. People think that hate is this real thing. And I think hate is a hoax. I do. But as far as free speech goes, this isn't even a free speech issue. When I say hate is a hoax, I think it's exaggerated. Like, I believe in weather, I don't believe in climate change. I think people get sick. I'm very dubious about the whole pandemic thing. I do believe that individuals hate, but as far as this quality of hate, no, you're more likely to be killed by somebody you love or somebody you know over money or greed as much as anything. I think the idea of racism is just kind of a blanket term. It's a smear, and it's practically meaningless. But what's happening to Kanye has nothing to do with free speech. His free speech has been well respected. Nobody silenced him. He said what he wanted to say. You have this freedom to say what you want. However, it doesn't grant you immunity from the consequences of what you say. And that's something he didn't think about. Oh yeah, happy birthday, Godzilla. Today is 11/3. Very significant day from a Metascript perspective. It's the birthday of Colin Kaepernick, birthday of Godzilla, and the anniversary date of the opening of the One World Trade Tower, which opened 13 years after the twins burned, the 33-year-old twins. Lots of interesting scripting around this date. In fact, the preponderance of the predictive programming pointing at Seattle getting nuked happens to point at 11.3. It really does. I mean, this is what's interesting. Just as 9/11 has been strongly associated with the burning of the Twin Towers, 11.3 has been associated with the takedown of the Space Needle. That's why I made a reference to the Tower of Babel in the video's title. And we'll get around to that, but yes, the Space Needle, Seattle getting nuked is very much tied with the number 113 and the date November the 3rd. We expected this to happen in 2019. If you weren't here in 2019, we were expecting Seattle to be ground zero for some kind of cataclysmic event. And we were looking 11/3/2019. Didn't happen. And I said, well, look, much of this programming has the dates inverted, 3/11. So 3/11/2020, we marked our calendars. 3/11/2020, World War III will begin, ground zero, Seattle. And what happened? Ground zero, Seattle, pandemic 2020. Like, we did call this in advance. We have been using predictive programming as a way to ascertain what's going to come down in the future through the, quote, news. And that's why today would be significant if it got nuked. And also, the Godzilla connection. You know, Godzilla is not just this goofy costume. If you look at the latest Godzilla movie, in fact, he's stored at the subterranean level 33 in the Godzilla versus King Kong. And there's a number of things that we could take out of that 33. It all connects to the Kraken. It all connects to the idea of this reptilian thing that's beneath the oceans that's going to rise. You could connect Godzilla to the Kraken in a number of ways, but the fact that the date of his birth is November the 3rd, and this is a big holiday today, is significant to this Kraken narrative, which was all about the elections and released the Kraken 11/3/2020. And this reoccurring theme of the Kraken has been building up. It's been attached to Watergate, or the modern day Watergate. Liz Cheney said the dam's about to break on Donald Trump over at the 1-6 committee. Again, we're talking about this idea of this Kraken rising from below. And that's why it's significant in the Godzilla versus King Kong movie that he was at subterranean level 33. Because much of this might just be a metaphor for awakening the mob mentality, the collective psychopathy. We're talking about the 33 levels below where Godzilla is stored could easily correlate to this occult New Age concept of the Kundalini, which correlates to the 33 segments in the human spine, and it's said to, quote, rise. The fire snake, the serpent energy rises. And I think there's a correlation here between the rising of the subterranean Godzilla, the rising of the Kraken, and the rousing of Leviathan, or the mass mind. And that could be, in fact, the Kraken itself. And I've suggested this before, that the Kraken is more likely the mass psychosis on the left and the right, the extremes, going mainstream. It's more likely that than an actual massive octopus-headed creature from below the oceans popping up somewhere on the Pacific Northwest. No, I think it's about this mental shift. It also ties into Corona and the crown when you get into the whole symbolism of the rising of the fire snake Kundalini, the number 33, as it relates to the idea of the 7 chakras, and the top one being the crown, the corona, which is lit at that time. And you can see in the symbolic language how all of 2020 seemed to have multiple meanings, and the idea of the corona being correlated with, of course, the sun, and the rays of the sun correlating to the thorns on the crown of Christ who died at 33. This is all very much correlated. This version of the Christ and the Phoenix, all connected to the reset, of course. And we'll get into all of this, but I'm just mentioning that the date, 11/3, birth date of Godzilla, released the Kraken date, the date that they opened the One World Trade Tower, very significant. You could also extrapolate, look, 113, not just the date, but 113. That is very prevalent throughout all of Pixar, and it always pertains to the same theme, post-reset. Pixar has the film Wall-E, which is essentially about this. It's about the one world rising from the ashes. And that's what the Twin Towers falling represents. Burned down like a phoenix. 30 or 13 years later, they opened the One World Trade Tower. And they were originally going to call it the One World Trade Tower Phoenix. And Donald Trump was part of that plan. It was going to be called that. It would have been too obvious. But let us continue. There's just so many things about the number 113, the date, and the significance in the bigger picture. But let's go through. Spirit Jordake says Godzilla Plasma Reset. Tomanoid2 says Godzilla's radioactive home is under the sea. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Right. Right. And again, I'm correlating Godzilla with the Kraken because specifically the birth date. Let's go through the notes that I've. There's been some new mind map developments as well. I did a mind map just showing the path from world stage to off world stage and how people arrive at the conclusions they arrive at with regards to what they believe when it comes to the televised reality. I also mapped out the character we know as Elon Musk, how he's constructed, and how this all pertains to the costume he wore on Halloween. We'll discuss that next. In fact, let's just go over that now. Because it goes back. This story of Elon Musk goes back. It goes back to who he is a composite of and who originated him. I mean, he did pretty much arrive out of the imagination of Werner von Braun. Mars, a Technical Tale, about the Elon who colonizes Mars. But listen to this. Is Elon Musk the Antichrist Jack Parsons summoned? This has to do with that Babylon working at the very origin of NASA. But this is a symbolic breakdown of Elon Musk's world stage persona. And coincidentally, I was making a list of all the people I thought could be possibly construed as the Antichrist. Greta, Donald Trump, and I was adding Musk. And then here in Halloween, he makes the news for wearing this costume, which was described as satanic. It looks like the Red Power Ranger, just a red suit of armor, samurai style. But there's a few more things about it. And again, it's Halloween. He has a pass to wear this. And the question here is he wearing a costume? Is he engaging in cosplay as anybody, would, especially a celebrity like everybody else is? Or are they using Halloween as a cover to deliver some kind of coded message? Now, here's what I've kind of arrived at here, because the costume does happen to sync up with everything else about the world stage construct we know as Elon Musk. This affirms all my suspicions about his role. One, let's just take note of the features of it. Red costume, adorned with a ram's head. And we can ignore the upside down cross for now. That's just too obvious. But it doesn't, I mean, I guess we can include that. But let's go with the ram's head. Of course, it resembles an Iron Man's costume, it being red. And then it's called the Devil's Champion. But he purchased it at a store called Abracadabras in New York for $7,500. It's unique, one of a kind. Unique, one of a kind, abracadabra, red, Iron Man-like suit of armor with a ram's head. Timestamp 1032. I know there's a QAnon tie-in to that somewhere, but we're not going to get to that till later. Now, he's a composite character comprised of Werner von Braun's Elon from Mars, A Technical Tale, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, and Willy Wonka from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, if you're not familiar with that one, he tried to buy Gene Wilder's home, or he did. He started a candy company, and this is all about the time he was trying to make his company Boring trend. Boring is the company that drills the holes for the Hyperloop. That's the Willy Wonka-like tunnels to these subterranean bases, etc. But that's the Willy Wonka tie-in to his character, the eccentric side of him. But he's also merged Tony Stark, Iron Man, and Von Braun is really much part of his persona and his disposition, his kind of flat affect. Now, the significance of Musk as head of SpaceX is vital here. The Kabbalistic symbolism correlates Mars to the color red, Aries, which of course is the ram, and the metal iron, plus Horus, the falcon-headed Egyptian deity. If you get a copy of 777 and other Kabbalistic writings by Aleister Crowley, you can read these Kabbalistic associations. They're neatly arranged. But again, red, Aries, iron, Horus, the falcon-headed god, these are all things connected to Mars. Mars, of course, is observably red, red because of what the iron, and it's the fourth planet from the sun. Now, I'm going to build on a couple things here with the entertainment media, the Metascript, and the other connections here. Mars has been, according to NASA, found to have a feature on it that resembles the House of Stark's logo, which is this wolf head. The House of Stark on Mars. This is a tie-in, of course, to the Game of Thrones, which the Game of Thrones has the House of Stark with an iron throne. The Iron Throne is another Mars reference because the iron. Of course, House of Stark, well, Tony Stark, Iron Man, another strong reference. And I want to mention that Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man, and he based his Tony Stark on the real-life Elon Musk. He admits this. But again, the House of Stark logo is on Mars. Tony Stark, Iron Man, House of Stark, Iron Throne. And all of this has to do with the reset, by the way. In Game of Thrones, Westeros burns, and this is all about burning this age as we move into the age of Mars, or Horus, which we'll get into here. Again, Musk's Falcon 9 rockets are a reference to Horus, the god of Mars, and he has proclaimed himself the Imperator of Mars, like the Emperor of Mars, on Twitter at one point. And just yesterday, he updated his Twitter account, his location, he put it to hell, because Antichrist was trending because of him. Now you might think this is all a joke, but remember, ground zero for NASA, ground zero for the space program, Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron were trying to conceive the Antichrist, with the help of L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, I don't know who the daddy would have been, but let us continue on the New Age significance. The Thelemic New Age declares that this is the Aeon of Horus. This is the Aeon of Mars. Musk is leading the way to Mars. In the Book of the Law, which was channeled by Aleister Crowley, this is where it all comes from. He declared, this is the Aeon of Horus. It came out of this book that he channeled from Horus while on a coke binge in Egypt somewhere. Now, the main part of the book, though, is about the word abracadabra, interestingly enough. The book is actually called the Book of the Law, but they'll call it 418. Oh yeah, Liber 418. That's their Bible. That's the Bible of the New Age Crowleyites, which is inseparable from the space program when you get into the occult symbolism. That's why you had Jack Parsons, the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, there with science fiction writer and founder of Scientology, space religion, Hubbard. They were creating this, our modern space religion, hiding the occult stuff, occulting Mystery Babylon, covering it up with science fiction. But again, the Book of the Law that the Crowleyites all swear by, they swear their oaths. Masons swear on Bibles. Well, the Crowleyites swear on the Book of the Law. Now, the book is called Liber 418, and this is very significant to them because 418 is the gematria. It's the gematria equation for abracadabra. Now, the word abracadabra means something along the lines of, I create as I speak, or something along those lines. And according to Crowley, quote, it is the word of the Aeon. So there you go. Now, again, Abracadabra is the name of the shop where Musk bought his costume. And this was publicized, like this was put out there. Like we all know where he shopped. Why? The costume resembles the Emperor, the fourth in the Tarot deck, which is the backbone of this New Age cult and all their teachings. It's really based on the Tarot, which encodes their astrotheological cult. And this is easy to see. get your deck of playing cards, four suits. It's the same four suits from the tarot. Your hearts are actually chalices. Your spades are swords. Your clubs are staves. Your diamonds are pentacles. And these represent the four seasons. If you add up all the different characters and all the numbers, the royals and the numbers, you get 365 because it pertains to the year. Four suits, four seasons, 52 cards, 52 weeks in a year. And the tarot builds on that, but it goes even deeper. Well, here's the emperor looking just like Musk in the red, and what's the main feature that you see here is the ram. It really emphasizes Aries. Again, it's that Mars connection. It's associated with the color red and the number 4, Aries. Now to continue, again, JPL, where NASA had its origin, began with a Thelemite warlock named Jack Parsons. Like, this is an admitted bit of history or whatever. I mean, it's well known by his own writings that he was indeed self-declared such. He was the American counterpart to Crowley. Now, why would it be ridiculous to consider that Musk would be joking? Like, why would we consider that to be a LARP? If Jack Parsons wasn't a LARP, a live action role player, if they weren't just trolling, if they really were part of some ancient mystery cult that had all these trappings, that have all these symbolic associations, then why would we laugh off Elon Musk dressing as the devil's champion? Considering Parsons' link to the space religion Scientology's founder L. Ron Hubbard and the movie star Marjorie Cameron, who happens to be the world's first UFO eyewitness. 1946, they get together, do the Babylon working to summon the Antichrist, or the spirit of the Antichrist. They didn't want a baby to have to take care of. They were trying to summon the Antichrist spirit, and then it would just, I guess, I don't know, find a vessel. And I assumed it was Trump, and it may still be. The timing fits. However, the next year she saw lights from the sky. Actually, it was that year. The next year was Roswell. Pre-Roswell, Marjorie Cameron reportedly saw a UFO. And my point is, this is the correlation between NASA's origin, Elon Musk's role in the space age as it pertains to preparing the masses for an alien savior / Antichrist. And one more thing, it should be noted that in these occult circles, in the Thelemic cult, they play cosplay all day. That's all they do, is they play like they're gods. They literally dress like the gods they wish to be possessed by. They call it assuming the god form. That's why wearing red is significant. If Musk is wearing red and he's wearing the ram's head within these temples, yeah, he would be considered the vicar of Mars, like the Pope is the vicar of Christ. I'm just suggesting here that maybe this goes one step beyond cosplay, but it's very easy for the media to laugh at, quote, conspiracy theorists, but I'm saying no, there's actually a deeper story here that I've been following for some time when it comes to this composite character. And of course, the idea of Jack Parsons being connected with the space program is something they would like to, I think, efface. Alright, going through some comments, joined by Diana South, JT33, Restless Bear, Echo Charlie Benton. Let us continue. Diana South says they will mingle themselves. Oh yeah, his legs of iron, his feet, part of iron, part clay. They will mingle themselves with the seed of men. Biblical reference, Daniel 2:3-3. Interestingly enough about this mingling of clay and iron or something, it reminds me of Neuralink and of this promise of unlimited evolution facilitated by technology, the technological singularity. And this whole idea of technology arriving at a point where it takes over as the main evolutionary catalyst from nature, that's what they're selling us. That's this new fake salvation. I mean, salvation, I think, has always been fake, whether the church sells it or some cult sells it. And I think this space religion, this modern religion, this and this is the global religion, the new universal faith that worships space as the new heaven. Yeah, they're actually selling the masses on this new form of transcendence and this technological singularity. And it should be noted that the name of the individual who coined that term, technological singularity, his name's John von Neumann. Newman. Like, that's just too obvious to me. Just to recap, Elon Musk's costume comports perfectly with the Kabbalistic associations and the New Age associations of the character of the Emperor and the Tarot card, and it relates Musk, I think, very much to a bigger, rather an older occult tradition, not just some billionaire playing cosplay. And you really look, Halloween, yeah, it's a children's holiday, sure, but you know it's actually another key here. It's like they make it so easy to laugh these things off, but the timing of it, not a coincidence. All right, let's continue through the notes. Two black radio hosts in Arizona could be a roadblock for Kanye West if he decides to sell his White Lives Matter t-shirts. Yeah, shout out to Conspiracy Charlatan. I actually got the story from him before CNN reported on it. Yeah, a couple of individuals have actually obtained the trademark to White Lives Matter, which blocks Kanye. And the fall of Kanye West is entirely scripted, and it's not over yet. This is something I don't want to get too much into, but it's a heads up, it's going to be big. The new current thing for anti-vaxxers is going to be clots. Tim Pool, Louder with Crowder, and then Stu Peters has a documentary. The next current thing is clots. Just be ready for it. And when it comes to clots, I do have a little bit of personal experience on this, and today I am going to be calling a number of funeral homes, and I might call a few morgues, because I'm going to expose this as what I think it is. I think this is just hyperbole, and I think it's a hoax. But the idea is, of course, that they're finding, and I can play some clips, but I'll probably get banned just for playing them. That's why I don't want to deal with it here. But it's just, again, it's just the current thing. I'm going to mostly ignore it, but I'll play this. Let me just play it. This is Steven Crowder, as shared by Tim Pool. Which means, okay, Tim Pool has 1.3 million followers. All 1.3 million will believe what he says. Same for Crowder. Steven Crowder has 1.9 million. They're all going to take this guy at his word.
It is something the body has constructed, but it's not clots. They behave like clots because they grow inside the arteries. They form the shape of the arteries in much the same way. You know, have you ever seen on YouTube where somebody's very sadistically poured molten aluminium down a termite mound, and they've then dug away and they've got a perfect cast of the termite mound or the ant nest? That's what happens with this white growth. This white growth is growing inside these, and it takes the shape, the exact shape of the artery.
Now, if you didn't understand that, he was comparing the state of someone's arteries in what he's finding in his funeral homes to the structures that he's pulling out resemble the molten casts of the inside of anthills. When you dump the molten inside, the molten aluminum, pull it out when it's cooled, and you get an idea of what the inside looked like. And he's describing this. Anyway, it's the new current thing. A lot of people are going to believe it. I'm just saying here that I have a few reasons to think that what they're saying is entirely bogus. But I'm going to deal with that as a separate topic. Remember when vax equals sterilization was the current thing? That was it for a little while. This whole current thinger thing, like the current thing, is usually ascribed to the NPC left. Whatever flag of the day, whatever martyr of the day, whatever cause or GoFundMe of the day, whatever outrage of the day, they're going to line up behind, and they all fall behind the current thing. They all support the current thing, and they all telegraph it in some way. And here, I'm starting to notice that on the counter narrative, there are also current things. And vax equals sterilization was the thing that they were all barking at once. Now nobody's talking about it. Well, the new current thing is clots. Just a heads up. Speaking of this digital transcendence, here's a link connecting AI and Hawking, Elon Musk, and Satan all together. Elon Musk isn't the only one warning about the future of AI. Stephen Hawking said it could be the
The
worst
brain
event
is also
in the
an
history
electro.
of mankind. Now, here's an individual who's suggesting here that artificial intelligence and any kind of Neuralink is just going to be the gateway, quite literally, to hell.
Chemical machine and receiver.
Satan is an acronym for silent assassination through adaptive neural and social networks. I'm putting brackets in there. And it's.
Okay, I'm going to pause from this technophobia. These are the people who are carrying iPhones in their pockets. And look, if you're scared that your technology was brought to you by the devil, they've already got your soul kind of in bondage here if you're carrying one of these phones. It's too late. Tim Ostman says the clot thing's been going on for over a year, and stillbirths are on the rise. Yeah, I was going to suggest here, if it is true that these things are sterilizing people, and if vaxes are pretty much a thing on the left, and so are, the issue of abortion is also a leftist thing, wouldn't this all cut down on abortions, and shouldn't you look at that as a good thing? Like it's a net gain. Look, I don't take it all that seriously when somebody says that they know for a fact that bodies are showing up clotted because some internet embalmer. Here's a few things about it. One, how would the embalmer know the status of the person? And then two, whenever somebody dies, the coroner has to decide, do we cut this person up or not? And it's pretty much determined based on whether they had a history. Is this expected? Is this an accidental death, or is this something that was likely to happen anyway? And it may not be necessary. My point is that if you're going to say that these bodies are showing up in your funeral home and they've got these hideous structures inside, you're suggesting here then that the people at the coroner's office didn't notice. Like, how did they not notice? And again, you wouldn't notice as an embalmer anyway, generally, if the person was autopsied, because their blood has already been more or less drained. All the arteries have been severed. You've got to do a multi-point injection. You're not dealing with clots at that stage. You're only dealing with clots, which is normal in dead bodies because, well, they're sitting there for a few days. But it's normal to deal with clots anyway, long before this thing. I was embalming way before this 2020 thing. And one of the things you do is you put forceps into the jugular and you're able to extract the clots, which are common in all these dead bodies. Like, clots are normal. Like, it surprised me, in fact, how big some of these fibrous clumps were. And you would have to use the forceps to constantly pull them out as you're injecting into the carotid artery. Or you would have, inconsistent perfusion of the embalming fluids. You have to constantly massage out the clots. Clots have always been a thing with dead bodies. It's not new. My point is, though, you're only going to have an intact circulatory system in somebody who died of natural causes. You're not going to, like these suddenly dead. Like, you had 150 people suddenly die of cardiac arrest in South Korea from boosters or whatever. Like, give me a break. Even if this were true, all these suddenly dead people, they're dying in their 30s. If they're dying in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, they're probably getting autopsied. We're not going to see clots on the embalming room table. I think these embalmers are all lying. And I think they're lying for money, and I think they're likely crisis actors. And I've watched the whole clip. I've been following the story, and I've been in contact with them. In fact, today, I am going to be calling some of these funeral homes. I'm not going to do it live. I'm going to get some interviews, and I'm going to speak with some experts in the field. I'm just saying no embalmer would ever be encountering an anomaly like that, because it would have been noted at the funeral, at the place where they do the autopsy, which is separate. The place where they do the autopsy is separate from where they are embalmed. Embalming is done by a private company. The state does the autopsy. And when they do the autopsy, they take blood samples. They take tissue samples. They take samples from every organ. If there was any kind of anomaly, they'd be the first to notice. Now you're suggesting here that the coroners and all the autopsy techs, the deaners, the morphology techs, they're not noticing these growths, but then they are being noticed at the funeral homes. Like there's a problem, there's a contradiction there, and I just don't buy it at all. I don't believe it. And I've seen these accounts, and look, Stu Peters has a documentary about this coming out in a few weeks. On his trailer, he's got Kate Perry with her eyeball malfunctioning. You know, she has that eyelid was twitching. He has her on the trailer. Oh, look, she got vaxxed. There's a blood clot going through her eyelid at that moment. Like, no, that's part of her broken robot dance. It's a choreographed move. And she invited, quote, flat earthers and spaces fakers to come witness it live. But he put that in the trailer for his documentary. Like, this is sensationalism. I would almost say that the hysterical, hyperbolic anti-vaxxers are just as bad as the COVIDiots were in 2020. They couldn't be as bad because they don't have any power. They just get censored. But in terms of being divorced from reality and being based on some kind of panic, yeah, that's where they're at, in my opinion. But we'll see. I'm going to do some investigation. All right, let us continue. Nick Cruz was sentenced to life. He's not going to get the death penalty. And this has made a lot of Parkland victims and survivors mad. And by the way, one of the March for Our Lives marchers was shot through the hands in St. Louis at that other event, which also happened to be at a performance art school. But yes, Nick Cruz is going to be alive, and I wonder if he's still receiving fan mail. He was receiving a ton of fan mail in 2018. Again, today is Godzilla's birthday, Colin Kaepernick's birthday, the opening of the World Trade Towers anniversary, the date of the 2020 contested election, and at the moment, Antichrist Musk has 113 million Twitter followers. Tim says, if Parkland was fake, everyone in that courtroom were crisis actors. How likely is that? What evidence are these courtrooms going through if it's all fake? Good questions, valid questions. This is a relevant point, and Miles Mathis talks about this a lot with regard to the OJ thing. What does it mean when you have fictional trials setting real legal precedent? Well, I mean, look, think about this too. You don't think it's likely this is faked. Well, do you think anything's ever been faked? Have any of these shooters ever been faked? It's not like this would be the first time the court systems have been whored out to the PSYOP entertainment complex. The whole system is playing into this. It's all part of the world stage. World stage media, world stage science, world stage justice, all divorced from reality. It's highly likely that they were all crisis actors and or dupes. Crisis actors and or dupes. Like if you're a dupe, you're just not getting paid, but you're still an actor. Look at the money involved. Assault Rifle 15, Armor Light 15 paid the Sandy Hookers $73 million. That's a lot of money to be given away on the basis of something so questionable. And the fact that these things aren't questioned by the people paying out tells you something. Same goes for Parkland. And of course, the birds are fake is like the biggest protest right now going around. And that's not being combated by the media because they're allowed to do it because Birds Are Fake is a parody movement and it's run by the Parkland students. Same acting troupe. And now they're running their own damage control operations. But no, I do not believe that any of the mass shootings events are real. Nick Cruz is a totally unbelievable character. I find plenty of it to be not only questionable, but I think obviously just on the face of it, hoaxy and fake. The blonde who was the eyewitness who was there with Nick Cruz, who gave him an alibi, coincidentally committed suicide last year after speaking with, was it Dean Ryan? I mean, we had someone there and it was an alibi. And I called media sources everywhere and I said, hey, look, are you guys going to look into this alibi? Nick Cruz has an alibi and you're letting these students put their faces on TV and the shooter could still be out there. And they're like, no, we get our news from higher up. We just repeat what we're told. We don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. But if you find this stuff on TV convincing, you know, um, good on you. But I think it's an act of faith, and I don't share that faith. And some people just stick to believing in whatever they're going to believe. Listen to this. This is an example of it. For weeks now, there's been this non-controversy of furries in schools demanding litter box equality. They want litter boxes in the school restrooms. Well, this is a hoax. It went viral, and the viral hoax has been mocked, and I kind of don't mock it because it's entirely believable. You're telling me it's not believable that students identifying as animals wouldn't request litter boxes? Like, it's within the realm of possibility right now. It wouldn't shock me. If I saw that on TMZ, oh yeah, public schools now have litter boxes for students identifying as animals. I'd be like, yeah, okay. Nothing new here. Anyway, here you have an example. This is someone running for the US Senate, Don Bolduc, talking to NBC News. And he's been pushing the story that yes, they are, in fact, putting litter boxes in classrooms. And when asked about this, he refuses to back down and he says, no, you have to prove it's not true. I don't have to prove it's true. You have to prove that they're not doing it. I mean, very, very forceful shifting of the burden of proof here.
At a recent event about children using litter boxes in schools. You know, there's no
Well, that's
proof.
not what I said.
Okay, well then tell me what you
Right.
said. I heard the audio.
So what? Yeah. So what I was talking about is all the craziness going on in our schools, and this is just one of them. And I had a parent and a student in that audience who came up to me and told me all about it. I've had that all across this state. So I'm only articulating what I heard from Granite Staters.
Now, he claims he's heard from parents and students that this is true. It's been refuted, but I'm saying it's believable, and I'm comfortable saying it's true because it's probably going to be true very soon. And by the time anybody gets around to debunking it, it's going to be true. This was the same thing we experienced with the Great Reset. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. There's no Great Reset. The Great Conjunction arrives, Saturn, Jupiter, winter solstice, 12/21/2020, boom. Welcome to the Great Reset. They were waiting for Saturn and Jupiter to conjunct with the winter solstice to hit the reset button. But until that moment, it was a coincidence. Now it's like, yeah, enjoy the Great Reset. You will own nothing, be happy, eat bugs. 80% of you won't have to work, which I don't know what that means. Do the 80% get to eat bugs? Is that what we're left with? I mean, it sounds utopian. And anytime I hear utopian, I just think, okay, cannibalism. Maybe not literal, but this is why Jeffrey Dahmer is #2 on Netflix. It's not because there's a huge demand for necrophilia and cannibalism. It's because they're getting the public acclimated to accepting the ideas of a zero-sum game. One man's gain, another man's loss. You're going to eat, someone else must be eaten. This is just suggesting here, I think they want us to think in terms of it being a closed system, which is what communism is. The technocrats are building a closed system for us. Just in, North Korea launched suspected ballistic missile. PM's Office of Japan issues emergency alert. New excuses for lockdowns. Ducking cover. Now, who didn't see this coming? Greta Thunberg. It's time to overthrow the West's oppressive and racist capitalist system. And if you've been following what I've been putting out on the metascript.cc, it has all been about how the West is a burning house, and all of the messaging and all of the movies saying the West needs to be burned. The burning down of the house is significant. It has to do with the burning of the astrological house as we enter the new age. And I've remarked, that's why I put Greta on my short list of potential antichrists. I put her on that list because she perfectly encapsulates this aeon of Horus ideal. Horus represents the youth rebellion, overthrowing the traditions of the past that have made the world unsafe, climate change, guns, capitalism. George Floyd died from climate change. Kanye's getting flack for saying, oh no, he was killed by fentanyl. And they're like, no, you can't say that. You're going to get sued. And then they said, no, he was killed by the cop's knee on his neck. Police oppression killed him. racism killed him. I'm saying no, he was killed by climate change. That's why he couldn't breathe. And I say this because that's ultimately what they're getting at. They're saying that our economic political system is inherently oppressive against the poor, inherently destructive against the environment, and it must go. They're giving people multiple reasons to get rid of this, quote, oppressive and racist capital system. Again, this is Greta Thunberg recognizing that, hey, all along, I was marching behind a stalking horse for communism. That's pretty much it. I remember calling her a watermelon Marxist day one. Oh yeah, she may be green on the outside, but wait till you see what's on the inside. All red. The activist claims that the world's current, quote, normal, dictated by the people in power, has caused the climate breakdown. Tomanoid2 says Soylent Green and Ray Liotta movies, No Escape, Escape from Absalom, both set in 2022 with cannibals. Yes. Soylent Green set in 2022. Soylent Green came out in 1973. 1973 figures prominently in 2022. That's the year of the first Roe v. Wade leak. That's the year of Watergate, which correlates to the January 6th committee. 73 was the year that Elvis was beamed by satellite to 1.2 billion people. And I think he reached that level this year with that Elvis movie. Lots of 1973 happening this year. And again, cannibalism right now. Alu Goering says Snowpiercer. Yeah, a Snowpiercer, interestingly enough, is about cannibalism, a closed system. They're all trapped in a train going around a frozen world, which symbolizes our system and it being a, quote, closed system, where the people at the very back are being eaten by the people in the front. But a couple of things about that movie, Snowpiercer. I think the main thing about it is it's taken to be a sequel to Charlie on the Chocolate Factory. I brought up Willy Wonka, but yeah, Snowpiercer is Charlie's train when he grows up. I mean, it's all, to me, almost plagiarism. I mean, they pretty much stole the story. It's definitely overlaid. Let's see here, going through your comments. Echo Charlie says, Utopia becomes a failed economic system. Well, right now we have been sold on Mars utopianism. And that's what I think this age of Mars or Aeon of Mars / Horus is actually about. They get us to accept, hey, the perfect way of living is the one we built in our models, like the one on Mars that we're going to have. No MAGA hats, no Qs, no question marks, no individual property rights. All the things that make this world bad, we're not taking with us to Mars. They go to Mars, they build the perfect society. And once they get you to accept that this is perfect, it's sustainable, it's this perfect vegan commune, separate from anything that made the world what it is today. Once they build that in your minds as acceptable, and they've already brought Bezos, Jeff Bezos / Nimrod out to communicate this. He said, we have a choice here. If you want freedom and liberty, you got to go to space, because here on Earth, it's going to become a civilization of stasis. They have talked about this, a civilization of stasis. They want to lock this down. But again, it's because they want us to adopt on Earth the way we're going to live on Mars. It's not about sending you to Mars. It's about making Earth Mars. And Mars just happens to be a gulag system. Bunch of communes. It's space communism. It really is. And this is reflected in the rhetoric with Putin versus the, quote, Antichrist West. It is the West that must be stopped at the Kármán line. Manifest destiny. It can't go on. It can't go into space, because if we let Bezos go into space, he's going to bring down trillions of dollars in wealth, and it will disrupt the world systems. It'll make life less sustainable here on Earth. We'll have mega yachts everywhere, and the communists won't be able to compete. And of course, it'll destroy the environment. This is the big schism here. We can't let the West win, because they will destroy the world if they're allowed to go into space with this mentality, this cowboy mentality. And this was pretty evident in the series Mars on Netflix, where you had two groups going to Mars. One was a group of scientists led by women, and the other was a group of oil drillers from Texas that went to Mars. The women discover life, But the men with their oil rigs drilling holes into Mars, raping Mars, literally cause an earthquake and kill everybody. What's the lesson there? I mean, it's pretty obvious. And that's why Jeff Bezos wore a cowboy hat when he went to space. He went to space on the anniversary of Apollo 11, launched at 9:11 a.m. This is in 2021. And the cowboy hat, I think, symbolizes that in the West, the richest man in the world, he sees space as a new frontier, the final frontier. This is why they brought William Shatner up into space, Captain Kirk, space, the final frontier. And now we have this conflict of visions between the West and the space commies. Space cowboys versus space commies. That's the next thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if something happens today because it's 11/3. Doblue.com says, Happy Godzilla Day to all who celebrate. Let's go through some more things. We talked about the event at the Pelosi's, and what a setup that was. That was a hammer attack on free speech itself. Very successful, I think. A lot of people retracted. Ban hammer down on free speech. Here's something to look forward to. Here's an actual tweet from Elon Musk. Twitter will not allow anyone who is deplatformed for violating Twitter rules back on the platform until we have a clear process for doing so, which will take a few more weeks. That's ominous right there. Twitter's Content Moderation Council will include representatives with widely divergent views, which will certainly include civil rights groups, community and groups who face hate-fueled violence, meaning he's going to get representatives from every group of snowflakes. So somebody somewhere will be offended by whatever you say. Talk to civil leaders, he says. Jay Greenblatt, ADL. No more AOK signs, no more bowl cuts. They put those in as hate crimes. Yeah, if you have a bowl cut, according to the ADL, you are basically wearing a swastika on your head, like it's a hate symbol. We're talking about how Twitter will continue to combat hate and harassment and enforce election integrity policies. That's Elon Musk directly tweeting this. There's your devil's champion Antichrist letting you know that you're going to get banned because you're going to offend somebody and you're not going to get back on. Ban evasion. Like, I am thinking that maybe I'm going to have to spend $8 a month for a blue check because I think they're going to be less likely to kick you off if you're a paying customer. Another headline, Greta Thunberg used to say this is from Michael Schellenberger, this is his tweet on it. Greta used to say her goal was to protect the planet from climate change, but now she admits it's, quote, to overthrow the whole capitalist system, which is responsible for, quote, imperialism, oppression, genocide, oppressive extractionism. Masks are off now. If you're listening to Infinite Plane Radio in March of 2020, you would have heard me say COVID-19 is just going to fast track 2030 and COVID is doing Greta's work. Elon Musk, here's the number, 113.3 million followers. His location has been moved to hell in response to this. And he's just clowning those of us in the know. He's like, yes, I'm the Antichrist or one of them, right here in the open, and nobody believes you. Tomanoid says, former Pakistan PM assassination attempt failed. He claims election tampering conspiracy with USA collusion and is on the march. Yeah, that's a new trend as well. The election rigging contests are now being accused of being more rigged by the other guys. Like, how do they draw a line? Like, what level of rigging is fair in these rigged election rigging contests? Echo Charlie says, but true Marxism has never been tried. They had that excuse until 2020, but any communist who says, oh, we've never implemented it, Obama's like, well, we're the ones we've been waiting for. Everyone who did it before us, yeah, they were wrong. No, they did have their chance. It's called Chazistan. CHOP. Chazistan out there in Seattle, which was ground zero for the reboot of civilization. Right there, they opened up the first ever Marxist paradise. And it only lasted a few weeks until I think a couple of 19-year-olds were murdered at the front gate. I don't even know what happened. I mean, there hasn't been any movies about what happened in Chazistan. One of our reporters was chased. We actually have a call. One of our reporters was chased out of Chazistan by a guy with a lead pipe, and he was on a bike, luckily, and he outpaced the person. But Chazistan was a Marxist paradise that lasted a few weeks. They had a farm with a fence around it, but they had it divided. They had it racially segregated against whites, and then it was indigenous only. And then they said, this is speciesist, and they tore down the fences. And then some kid cosplaying like a kung fu master using a broomstick like a bow staff did all these martial arts routines and destroyed their crops. That was the end of it, though. Never forget Chazistan Chop 2020, Tim Osman. No doubt, you let them take control, that's what will happen. I was going to say acceptable losses. Let's just build a wall around that part of Seattle. And then open it up in 6 months and we'll see what they've created. And it would be, I imagine it'd be sustainable, green, equitable, everybody dressed up in, whatever they're making from within. I mean, I don't think they would be devolving into cannibalism and murder and in gang warfare and all that, right? Of course not. Yeah, that's right. Raz is the guy. The leader was Raz, and he's handing out AR-15s from his Tesla. And Raz, interesting to me, I thought, is backwards is Czar. And he's like the leader of Chazistan. He was a SoundCloud rapper who was also a filmmaker. They made movies, and I don't want to look these up right now, but Raz from Chazistan and his friends were filming movies about raping call girls, like really nasty stuff. One of our reporters actually lived in the same building as these individuals. Very, very rich. The guy drives a Tesla, but then he's leading a commune where people are basically, I don't know what they were doing. It was like, one minute they're like, if you're white, hand out $10 to the nearest person of color. Like they were doing everything the Marxists have ever wanted to do. And it just didn't turn out like they imagined. Ollie Goering says, Chazistan going strong and went nationwide, homeless tent cities, the streets are paved in brown gold. I have seen that. The homeless tent cities, it is a big deal. I mean, here where I live, though, luckily they have resources and they're actually helping people. But yeah, Chazistan was a complete and abysmal failure. All right, let us continue. Man behind Pelosi hammer attack was radicalized by Gamergate. I would have pinned him for a Chazistanian. Nudist, Pelosiite. But no, he turns out to be a QAnoner all of a sudden. David DePepe. And this is another example of why I really think we're looking at world stage drama and it's got to be fake. Look, I'm not cheering it on. I'm not making punchlines about violence. I don't think violence is a joke. I think I think we should be past it. It's a real pandemic. I have no tolerance for that. However, they simulate violence all the time. And this sounds simulated to me. It sounds fake. The story sounds fake. Why? Because just 3 or 4 months ago, this guy was out drinking and partying, cocaine and alcohol, and all the headlines were mocking him for being hammered. Because the right-wingers believe that Nancy Pelosi drinks, which she does not. She doesn't drink. But videos circulated of Nancy Pelosi where somebody had slowed the video down so it sounded like she was slurred. Those videos were used as a basis for saying that she's a drunk. Now they're saying, oh, her husband's hammered just like she was. That was months ago. And this all ties in, I think, to the symbol of the gavel. It's got to be some inside Masonic joke. They're all about that gavel. And then, of course, this attack revolving around the hammer. It sounds to me like a movie prop. And then his name. Tell me the name, DePepe. And it does connect to Pepe the Frog. His website was called Friends, F-R-E-N-S, something Friends. Pepe the Frog spells Friends, F-R-E-N-S. He not only became a QAnoner and election denialist, but he's also a Pepe the Frogger. But you don't see any frogs on his website. Even though he used the catchphrase Friends, you cannot find one image of this guy with a Pepe the Frog. You cannot find an image of this guy with a MAGA hat. The same goes for the Santa Barbara father who supposedly stabbed his kid 17 times for Q because his kid was a reptilian because Q told him so. That story was also similarly fake. And they said, oh yeah, he was a full MAGA believer. I'm sorry, but if somebody believes in MAGA, you know how you know? They'll tell you. They wear it on their hats. They have their flags. They put it on their lawns. There's no way that they don't show this in their real lives. And no, I don't believe this guy was an actual hammer attacker. And now radicalized by Gamergate. What that means is he was a sexist. That his politics came from Gamergate, which got him involved in right-wing extremism, and of course Gamergate's about attacking women. There you have it. All right, let us continue. Fake news of Trump's death spread shortly after Musk announced that Twitter would allow users to purchase blue checks for $8. Yes, that was just a trending headline. Probably wishful thinking for some. Now I want to play a clip here from Les Luthor. I had Les Luthor on a few weeks ago. We only had him on for half an hour because I was on Zoom and it cut us off, but I'm going to get him on longer. But he talks about something he calls illusion warfare. And illusion warfare is the way that the public can be convinced of, well, warfare, any kind. And I think what they've done with climate change, what they've done with the belief that there's this epidemic of mass shootings, they've been doing this for a long time. And we're just talking about the big psyops, widespread psychological warfare. And Les has been there in the UK, boots on the ground, and he's exposed it as nothing but widespread LARPing and mass casualty drills. And yet, he talks to people, and I encountered this. They'll say, oh, I don't watch TV. They act like they're not brainwashed. Oh, I don't pay attention to the celebrities. Well, I don't know why you do. And I'm like, no, actually, you may not watch TV, but you are in the immersive illusion. If you have a smartphone, if you get your information about the world beyond your immediate perceptions through that device, you're in the TV. It's not about watching it anymore. And I think this is one of the secret meanings behind Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey and David Bowman merging with the monolith to become the Star Child. I think we've all merged with the monolith as of probably September the 11th, 2021. And by merging with the monolith, I think it means that we have taken the necessary steps in terms of our epistemology has been inverted. We have stepped through the screen, and that has become our reality filter. Now, here we have Les Luthor, who talks to people who tell him, I don't watch TV. And he's like, okay, this is his explanation for it, how he addresses that.
But here's an interesting thing. Turns out they did the same thing in London. In London, they had a V2 rocket on display in Trafalgar Square. Now, of course, I shouldn't have to say this as a disclaimer. We should know this by now. We cannot trust any image that comes through this black cube. It comes through the television. By the way, when I say television, the television is anything that is telling a vision. Because when I say TV, people get smart ass and go, oh, I haven't watched TV since 2002. You're listening to me on a TV right now. Your smartphone is a TV. Your laptop is a TV. Yeah? The TV is just
your neighbor's a TV. Every unpaid crisis actor forwarding some half-investigated piece of intel supporting their cognitive bias is part of the TV. This television is about the centralized vision coming from the cult of the monolith, from central control. It's not about the particular device that you use. And Les has encountered the same thing. I put a link to this video. This is Les Luthor on YouTube. I do have a 30-minute interview with him, but I'm going to get him on for longer here very soon.
the general all-round term we use for the black cube. So don't be trying to act like a smart ass and say I don't have a TV.
Yeah, exactly. You have a TV. You're surrounded by them. You are in the immersive illusion. You step through the screen. And if you're a world stager, none of this stuff makes any kind of sense to you because you just assume all this stuff is real. And you think somebody who goes around questioning this stuff must be a disaster troll, which is what the BBC calls us now. We are all disaster trolls. Although I would say that the mass media are disaster vultures. If it bleeds, it leads. The difference is they believe this stuff is real. And nothing makes the mass media happier than a pile of dead kids to grandstand on top of. And here I'm saying, no, this stuff is all fake. Like, who's the sick one here? The ones who think that it's real and they can use this for political ends, or the ones who are questioning if it's even real? How is the skeptic worse than the actual shooter? All right, this is what I mentioned earlier. This is Pope Elon in his emperor costume, and the time on his monolith black cube smartphone portal is 10:32. Turns out, on a completely related QAnon post from April the 6th, 2018, it was post number 1032, and it says, "We are active." There you have it. We are active from Q. That's how Q drops work. These things are old. That particular Q posting, think about this, is 5 years old. And you have somebody drooling over it and correlating it to an Elon Musk costume party and suggesting here that that number 1032 was chosen on particular. They said, hey, don't photograph me at 1033. Make sure it's 1032 because I need to tell them that we are active. And that this was posted April 6, 2018 with the foreknowledge that, yeah, Trump's going to lose the election. Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter. And November the 1st, 2022, we are going to find this to be relevant at that time. I mean, come on. That is just grasping at straws. And now they don't even talk about John F. Kennedy Jr. They're hoping that Kanye West or Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's like, what a step down. 1 minute, you got this guy behind the scenes fighting the deep state, James Bond like JFK Jr. faked his death. He's going to come back and it's going to be awesome, great awakening. Oh, but you'll take Kanye. Or, because he gets clicks. Or Marjorie Taylor Greene, which makes me think, what's your standard of judgment? Like, how do you decide who a good leader is? Is it based on how good they are at generating clickbait? Trolls? Trump's a troll. MTG's a troll. Musk is a troll. Kanye's a troll. I'm detecting a pattern here. Okay, let us continue. Again, fake news about Trump. Not dead. The Pelosi hammer guy, again named De Pepe. That is Pepe the Frog. You can't tell me otherwise. Elon Musk is the Antichrist summoned by Jack Parsons, or at least they want you to think so. Today is Godzilla's birthday and the anniversary of the One World Trade Tower. Now, what do we have here? Somebody is telling me on Twitter that any day now, JFK Jr. is going to have a verified Twitter account. Okay, I'll let you know if JFK Jr. gets a verified account, if he pays his $8. Julie Powell, a little Schadenfreude for the anti-vaxxers. Julie Powell, food writer behind Julie and Julia Dead at 49. Anti-vaxxers will be happy about this because she said a little while ago, before she died, quote, "I would argue that COVID does kill some of the right people. The anti-vaxxers, the anti-maskers are dying in legions." Now, again, this is showing you the pathology of the world stagers. I don't believe that anybody was dying. And if I did, I wouldn't be celebrating. She literally believes it, and she's happy about it. And now, the people on the other side are happy that she's dead. And they think she died from what? Guess. Each side accuses the other side of dying of whatever it is that makes them look better by comparison. This is about the saved versus the unsaved. This is a religious cult, has nothing to do with science, has nothing to do with dangerous medications or whatever. And most of the people who are totally scared about the needle drink booze, take pills, smoke cigarettes, do drugs, stay up late, watch bad TV. They're not exactly thinking about their health every second of the day for something that has a minute chance of doing something hypothetically. Like, being afraid of the hypothetical takes the place of being afraid of what's real and in your face and what might actually be a viable threat to your life. But we see this on all sides. Ben Shapiro Show says the red wave is coming. Just a heads up, in 5 days we have the midterms, 11/8/2022. This has been described as the most momentous election since the midterms of the Civil War of 1862. The significance here, well, the red wave. That's what stood out to me. Because the catchphrase from the right has been flood the polls 2022. And back in March, that Batman movie came out where the Riddler has his armies sent out to the election day to disrupt it. And right now you have the ballot box patrols looking for mules. And in the Batman film, they bomb a dam and literally flood the polls. Gotham is underwater on 11/6. That's the story in the new Batman movie, so heads up here. Next week, the red wave is coming. Could also be a reference to a nuclear tsunami if the Poseidon happens to pop up Red October style. Hunt for Red October did manifest in the form of this submarine doing drills. And they have done plenty of drills. Putin has already practiced in simulation blowing us up. Again, today is the day, for those of you just got here, it is the day that much of the predictive programming for the downfall of Seattle is pointed, specifically the Space Needle. And the Space Needle is representative of the same thing as the One World Trade Tower. I mean, you have these various ways of representing the same concept. I would say that the Tower of Babel represents the one world, one language. It's the space program and the internet. We're all united, International Space Station. But you can also see the Tower of Babel represented in other monuments to man's hubris, like the Titanic, Too Big to Fail, capitalism. That's why Bezos is so significant as Nimrod, the builder of the Tower of Babel. We're just looking at symbolism. When he gets on his mega yacht, he's flaunting Globe's wrath, and he doesn't care. Because again, he's the embodiment of Nimrod here. And if anybody should know the implications of a mega yacht, it would be Bezos. And just as Nimrod challenged God and went into God's turf, as in heaven, by the tower, Bezos too is making those same moves. And this all ties in, of course, to the symbolism we see in the meta script, the bigger picture. For example, I told you he launched at 9:11 a.m. Well, there's a 9/11 conspiracy-themed show called Inside Job. And Season 1, Episode 6, Bezos is on his mega yacht, which represents the Titanic, represents the Tower of Babel. And it gets taken down by the Kraken. Again, the Kraken is synonymous with Seattle as well. And more recently, a couple of months ago, there were simulations being done in Seattle for what would happen if a tsunami hit Seattle. They were talking about an earthquake magnitude 7.5, but listen to this. This is from July. Simulation shows tsunami waves as high as 42 feet at the Seattle Great Wheel and will reach inland as far as Lumen Field and T-Mobile Park. Tsunami waves as high as 42 feet. I could go deep into the weeds here with the symbolism of why 42 would tie into this bigger story. And I've mind mapped this stuff out for well over a couple of years now. Very consistent. But what struck me is, I was watching Stranger Things. And I believe in Stranger Things, the town of Hawkins represents Seattle. And Season 4, Part 2, Hawkins is cracked open. It's split open and hellfire is released. And it looks like fallout from the sky. Again, Hawkins looks like Seattle, 42-foot waves, all at the same time. And this has been a recurring theme, nuclear winter, because that would be one of the after effects. You got the blast, you got EMP, and then the environmental effects of lots of nuclear detonations disrupting our climate. And that could be simulated, I imagine, to some level. I mean, if they can fake it on TV, it's real. They don't actually have to do anything dramatic. Don't get your hopes up that you're going to have some spectacle. CEO of Nokia explains that by 2030, smartphones will be obsolete and will be built directly into the body. This clip came across my desk here, and I'm like, wow, look, World Economic Forum bringing out Gaia, name of the Earth God, but Gaia, the global AI initiative, where they're talking about augmenting government with something a little more objective, but not God, but a synthetic God. And I think that's what this AI thing is about. But I see these things and I'm like, are they not intentionally trying to make it look like something it isn't? Because you're showing somebody with the World Economic Forum logo on the palm of their hand, the right hand. And that logo does happen to have a 666 pretty evident right there in the middle
All
of it.
think we're going to move from this form factor to something that's on your face glasses and when computing's all on the edge.
All right, 50 seconds. Who wants to answer quickly?
I think it will go. It will. First of all, it will definitely happen. I was talking about 6G earlier, which is around 2030. I would say that by then, definitely the smartphone as we know it today will not anymore be the usual kind of the most common interface.
Wow.
Many of these things will be built directly into our bodies.
There you have it, directly built into your hand. Everything on TV is concurrent programming. It's the only reason I reference these terrible shows. And I don't hate them, but it's opposition research, and I do have to do the work. Like, listen to this. Missouri hospital investigated for denying emergency abortion. This is a perfect example. Okay, I watched Game of Thrones, and I started to watch the new season called House of the Dragon. The very first episode I watch has this type of incident. Somebody dies because she's experiencing a very, I guess it was going to be a life-threatening birth, and the king decides we're just going to have to take the baby out because patriarchy. Even though she's the queen, the most powerful woman in the kingdom, yeah, it's not up to her because she's just a broodmare for the state. Now here I am watching Game of Thrones. Like, let me get away from the TV for a minute, or the news. Get away from the world. Let me watch some, fantasy, some Middle Age stuff, Middle Ages, medieval, dragons, dwarfs, and all that. And I start watching Game of Thrones, and I'm like, is this an advertisement for Democrats? This is a worst case scenario. This is why we have women's rights. Like, they put that right there. Like, I don't watch these movies because I find them entertaining necessarily. CNN is entertaining to me. That's my comedy. That's my entertainment. But it's just the fact that the agenda is so widespread, and what this proves is my fundamental premise here, that all of the world-shaping abilities of the media is centralized, that it's not competition for worldviews, it's all centralized. No matter what you're watching, you're going to be hit with the same messaging. You can't watch anything without being caught up on the news. They've made it impossible to avoid it. We're in an echo chamber. Again, heads up, next current thing is clots. Might as well put that, I don't know what you can do. Maybe, is there a ribbon we could have for clots? Like a clot ribbon, you can put it on your profile. If you're worried about clots and you're going to start talking about clots, might as well start virtue signaling that now. I mean, how does that even work? Like, let's say you're a vax junkie and you cut yourself somehow. Are you going to be able to pull out some large fibrous thing? Some kind of, I mean, they're making it sound like it's an alien body taking over from the inside. It's total science fiction. JT33 says, imagine how many clots implanting our smartphones into our bodies will cause. Yeah, I can imagine some of these anti-vaxxers like, oh yeah, you're going to get clots. Meanwhile, they're in a Burger King parking lot. They're eating a Whopper. All right, you're eating a Whopper, and you're smoking cigarettes, and you want to warn me about chemtrails and vaccines. Like, I want the health nuts to warn me. Or, I'll take my medical advice from healthy people, not from internet panic-driven mobs. Listen to this. Stephen Colbert sacrificing a baby. I'm sure this is just regular comedy as normal.
No, the Norquist is coming for me! I must appease him with the gift of a man-child! Come to me! I must feed you! I must feed you to the Norquist! Ah! No!
All right, that's enough of that. Stephen Colbert sacrificing a baby. Truth in plain sight, Elon Musk dressed as the Antichrist. Like sometimes you just have to recognize that they're not joking. Another huge piece of Chinese space junk falling to Earth. Again, Long March 5B rocket, heads up. If you're a believer in outer space and you're not locking down, why not? If you're a believer in the pandemic and you're still not social distancing, despite them telling you don't have to, why not? If you are a believer in ocean levels rising, climate change, wrath of globe, etc., why are you still using dino juice? Why do you even live an unsustainable lifestyle? Like, I have all these questions, don't get answers because most people don't really believe, or rather they don't live consistent with what they profess, especially if they're evangelizing for it, I've noticed. Here's Greta Thunberg on how to tackle climate anxiety. Now, climate anxiety is something that was predicted in the movie Don't Look Up and Moonfall. In both those movies, your main scientist is addicted to or has to take pills for anxiety. And then you had that NASA scientist a couple days ago handcuffing himself to, was it JP Morgan as some bank for climate change, and he looked just like the scientist that Leonardo DiCaprio and John Haley were portraying. But here's Greta Thunberg, how to tackle climate anxiety. And again, she's number 3 on my Antichrist shortlist.
Of course, when you're a child, when you're like 8 or 10 or 11 years old, there is not much that you can really do to make a big difference. So then you start small. I started with turning off the lights at home to save energy, and that led to another thing, which led to another thing. And eventually I stopped flying, I became vegan and so on, and then I got my parents to do that too, because I started talking to them and they started to listen to my concerns. And by making them change, it also gave me the sort of courage that I needed to move on, to start school striking. So starting somewhere is really good.
Yeah. There you have it. Climate anxiety, though. Climate anxiety is a thing. If you don't have it, it's because you don't know the science. I do have a new South Pole clip. We put this together last week. We didn't finish it before Saturday. And then Saturday Night Live had a skit where Kanye West went over to the pillow guy. And they didn't really do a great skit, but it was like, wow, that's very close to what we were doing. I'm going to play it. You're only going to hear the audio if you're just listening, but this is KK Kanye sources clan hoods from the pillow guy.
Hey, Candace, honey. Now that I'm not a billionaire anymore, I need a steady supply of slave labor to meet demand for my new KKK on yay hoods.
To Guantanamo with those business people. Let me introduce you to one of my election denialist friends. I know just the person to get behind White Lives Matter hoods you're designing.
Meanwhile, behind the facade of an innocent-looking sweatshop.
Hello, Kanye. I'm Mike Lindell.
That's yay, Mike.
Who invented and patented my used pillow. An open cell poly foam pillow used, and that's a guarantee. Full disclosure, this is not a medical device and is not intended to diagnose, treat, mitigate, or cure any disease. But it can cure crack addiction, or at least turn that addiction into millions and millions of dollars. These hoods will be the most comfortable hoods you'll own or your money back.
That sounds great, Mike. Can you put swastikas on them? Between the eye holes?
Yes, we can put swastikas between the eye holes, Kanye. Not to mention, this deal gets rid of a tremendous amount of overstock. We were going to have to hire Antifa to burn. But now we're good.
So what's the deal? Remember, use code TRUMP1 for 17% off.
White Lives
White
Matter.
Lives Matter.
Where we go one,
we go one,
we go all.
We go all.
All right, there you have it, South Pole clip. Candace Owens and KK Kanye get clan hoods from Mike Lindell's overstocked pillowcase warehouse. Okay. Anyway, great idea, though. I'm pretty sure he's not selling all those pillowcases. And if he's spending money to send text messages like I do, There's no way he's making money. I get like 5 text messages every single night. And I think that might be one of Mike Lindell's marketing tactics. He's like, okay, we send out text messages at 3 a.m. advertising, can't sleep? Buy this pillow, 20% off. You wake up a certain percentage of the population, they can't figure out why they can't sleep. It's their phone. It's you waking them up. And they buy your pillow. Perfect. Perfect scam, or rather perfect marketing ploy. There is a commenter in here. It's Tim Osman, spelled with an S. And just a heads up, Tim Osman was allegedly the CIA alias for Osama bin Laden. Just a bit of a trivia there. All right, let's continue going through the rest of my Twitter feed. It's Real Tim Osman. We already covered this. Clots are the thing of the day. It's Godzilla's birthday. I am looking into the appears to be another celebrity rapper death, but look, it's fake until proven real, but I got to do my due diligence. Not every death is fake. Look for the hallmarks, but it looks like another Halloween sacrifice, and we'll look into that one in detail later tonight. Here's some vintage predictive programming from a couple years ago. This is from 2011. Captain America. What do you see? On the right, his shoulders touching a Corona bottle. On the left, you see a literal big Corona on a screen. And on his chest, he's wearing a phoenix. All these three things tie together. Lots of predictive programming. And that's why I'm pointing this out, because today is 11/3. And November the 3rd is the date figured prominently in all of the predictive programming for Seattle getting the nuke. So just a heads up, if it's going to happen, today might be the day. Also, never forget, let's go ahead and listen to some of the Vax Nazis. A little throwback to 2020, 2021.
If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
What goes through your mind when you hear a lot of the anti-vaccine rhetoric?
At this point, it seems criminal to me.
Vaccine free and impacting the rest of us. It's like drunk drivers.
You got to identify those people and bring them out into the open, so you know who they are.
Ich kann sagen, also, sie sind wirklich zu prügeln, sind diese Menschen.
Ja, also
Und dann passiert
we can keep people who are not vaccinated away from those who are, given that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
You know, I actually want a compilation of dancing nurses for 2020. That's what I would like to take with me into the future. But it's important to remember what happened when the masks were off. I mean, it's interesting. We put the masks on, and then people revealed who they really were the entire time. And if anything, that was the only kind of awakening that came out of 2020. But I think for the most part, no, the masses are so deep into the world stage. We are through the screen. And I don't know if there ever is any sort of a possibility for a, quote, great awakening or any kind of mass awakening. Look at the people held up as heroes that people line up behind. They're lining up behind Kanye West, who said, "Losing Adidas made me know what it felt like to be George Floyd with a knee on my neck." I mean, how out of touch can you be? Zaret says, twerking cures everything. I have an explanation for the dancing nurses. I think it was the pharmacies were open, and they needed to somehow compensate them all. Or distract them all, rather, I should say. It's a distraction. And they're all told, oh no, everything's really bad at the other hospitals, but we have it good here. The least we could do is make a display of our good morale. And that's what they were doing. They were dancing to lift your spirits. There's a few more things about the 1-6. Stuart Rhodes, Oath Keepers founder, leader, talked about how he wanted combat on U.S. soil. He was begging Trump's people to allow them to go ahead and start conducting mass arrests. What do you all think this was? Was 1-6 an attempted insurrection? Was it a sting to make it look like an attempt at an insurrection to get a bunch of people involved? And was it meant to fail from day one? Was it meant to fail, or did it fail? I happen to think it was meant to fail. It's too structured. And at first, I entertained the idea that this was an organic move, and it was a legitimate attempt to disrupt the proceedings. But the longer this drags on, the more I think this is Watergate Part 2.